On June 20th, 2001, Andrea's husband Rusty left for work, leaving Andrea with their 5 children. Dora, Andrea's mother-in-law, was due to come by in about an hour to take over for Andrea. In those 60 minutes, Andrea drowned all 5 children, starting with John, Paul, and Luke. Andrea then laid them in her bed, tucking them in before she continued the drownings with Mary, who was left floating in the tub. Andrea's son Noah came in and immediately asked what was wrong with Mary. Andrea turned to Noah as Noah tried to run, but Andrea caught him and drowned him as well. She then put Mary in John's arms in the bed, leaving Noah floating. Andrea then called her husband, telling him to come home right away. Then she called 911.
What's your name? Yates. What's the problem? I just need him to come. Is your husband there? No. So what's the problem? I need him to come. I need to know why we're coming, ma'am. Is he there standing next to you? She? Are you having disturbance? Are you ill or what? Yes, I'm ill. You need an ambulance? No, I need a police officer. You have sent an ambulance.
Andrea Kennedy was born on July 2, 1964, to parents Jetta and Andre Kennedy, Irish immigrants. Andrea, who was the youngest of 5 children, suffered from mental illness early on. She was bulimic during her teen years and dealt with severe depression, speaking to friends about suicide at the age of 17. Despite her mental illness, Andrea was class valedictorian, captain of the swim team, and in the National Honor Society. Andrea went on to complete a nursing program and from 1986 to 1994 worked as a registered nurse at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center. In 1989, Andrea met Rusty Yates, and the two moved in together and were married on April 17, 1993. At their wedding, the two claimed that they would seek to have as many babies as nature allowed, and purchased a 4-bedroom home in Friendswood. In February of 1994, their first child, Noah, was born. Soon after, the Yates family relocated to Florida to a small trailer for Rusty's job. By the birth of their 3rd child, Paul, the family had moved back to Houston and purchased a motorhome. After the birth of their 4th son, Luke, Andrea became severely depressed. It is strongly alleged that her mental condition was heavily influenced by the extremist sermons of Michael Peter Warnicki, the same preacher who sold them their motorhome. Andrea's family was growing more and more concerned as Andrea seemed to be captivated by the minister's words. On June 16, 1999, Rusty found Andrea shaking and chewing on her fingers. Less than 24 hours later, Andrea tried to commit suicide by overdosing on pills. Andrea was immediately admitted to the hospital where she was prescribed antidepressants. Soon after Andrea left the hospital, she held a knife up to her neck and begged Rusty to let her end her life. Andrea was hospitalized again and this time given a mixture of medications, including Haldol, an antipsychotic drug. Miraculously, Andrea's condition quickly improved, and she seemed to be emotionally stabilized. Life seemed good for a while, until July 1999, where Andrea had a nervous breakdown and 2 suicide attempts, followed by 2 psychiatric hospitalizations. It is after these visits that Andrea was diagnosed with postpartum psychosis. Andrea's first doctor, Dr. Eileen Starbranch, strongly urged Andrea not to have any more children, as it would guarantee future psychotic depression. Andrea, however, did not heed this advice and went on to conceive their 5th child, less than 2 months after her discharge. Andrea stopped taking the Haldol in March 2000 and gave birth to daughter Mary on November 30th of that year. Amazingly enough, Andrea still seemed to be coping well. However, all of that changed when Andrea's father passed away on March 12, 2001. This sent Andrea over the edge. Andrea started to cut and mutilate herself and began to read the Bible feverishly. She also stopped feeding her baby Mary, who eventually became so emaciated and thin that she required immediate hospitalization. On April 1st, 2001, Andrea met Dr. Mohammed Saeed, who treated and then released Andrea. On May 3rd, 2001, Andrea went into a near catatonic state and drew a bath in the middle of the day. Andrea later confessed to police that she initially planned to drown the children that day, but decided against it. Andrea was admitted to the hospital the next day, where her psychiatrist determined she was suicidal and had filled the tub to drown herself. Andrea continued to be treated by Dr. Saeed until June 20th, 2001, when she went through with her initial plan to drown the children. According to trial testimony from 2006, Dr. Saeed advised Rusty, a former NASA engineer, not to leave Andrea unattended under any circumstance. However, Rusty ignored this advice, leaving Andrea alone with the children plenty of times in the weeks leading up to the drownings. He hoped, he said, that this would improve her independence. He told family that by leaving her alone with the kids every morning and every evening, this would prohibit her from becoming totally dependent on him and his mother for her maternal responsibilities. Andrea revealed to a prison psychologist that she told Rusty she did not want to have sex because Dr. Starbranch had said she might hurt her children. However, Andrea claimed Rusty asserted his procreative religious beliefs and persuaded her that she could handle more children. Author Susan O'Malley highlighted Rusty's sense of unreality regarding having more children, saying, during the trial, he'd successfully maintained the position that Andrea would be found innocent. He had fantasies of having more children with her after she was successfully treated in a mental health facility and released on the proper medication. He worked his way through various fixes for their damaged lives, such as a surrogate motherhood and adoption, before giving in to reality. Rusty contended that Dr. Saeed was responsible for recognizing and treating Andrea's psychosis, and that the doctor had refused to continue her regimen of Haldol, the treatment that had worked for her in 1999. Rusty said Andrea was too sick to be released from her last stay in the hospital in May of 2001, and that the staff should lower their heads in shame and embarrassment. Media and news outlets allege that Michael Peter Woronicki, Andrea's preacher, is in part responsible for the deaths due to his fire and brimstone message and teachings found in his newsletter Andrea received. The newsletter was even entered into evidence at the trial. However, Michael and even Rusty reject these accusations due to the fact that Rusty claims his family's relationship with the preacher was not that close and that Michael did not cause her delusions. While in prison, Andrea claimed she had thought about killing the children for 2 years, and that she thought she wasn't a good mother and that her sons weren't developing normally. She told her jail psychiatrist, "It was the 7th deadly sin. My children weren't righteous. They stumbled because I was evil. The way I was raising them, they could never be saved. They were doomed to perish in the fires of hell." She also claims that Satan influenced her children to make them more disobedient. Many religious and secular groups claim Andrea's religious position absolutely influenced her decision to murder her children, claiming she would make the ultimate parental sacrifice, sealing the fate of her eternal soul but guaranteeing that her children would enter heaven.